Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. I do have one quick favor before we get to the video that you came here for, and that is very simply this. You see that little red subscribe button below this video? Go ahead, smash that subscribe button. It really does help me. It really does help this channel grow and my audience grow. So go ahead and hit that red subscribe button. And now, here is the video that you came here for. Country. But with that said, let's get to the topic of the day. And the topic of the day is the fallout and follow-up from the craziness of last week's Jimbo Fisher versus Nick Saban debacle, okay? And by now, you all know kind of how it all was all set up, and we certainly talked about it on last Friday's show. Obviously, it all started Wednesday night booster event, Nick Saban talking to his boosters, talking about a lot of different things. But in the process, what happened? Nick Saban, of course, dropped the phrase and dropped the line, oh yeah, but Texas A&M bought every single player in their recruiting class. We don't buy anybody here. We were all shocked by it, and then we were equally shocked by the follow-up with Jimbo Fisher. He goes to the podium the following morning. He is talking to the media, to America, to whoever, and he basically throws Nick Saban completely under the bus, says he's a narcissist, says if you guys think this guy is God, go ahead and see how God got his deal done. He said that Nick Saban needs to be slapped. It was incredible, and that was essentially where I left off on the show on Friday, and I really kind of shared my opinions about the whole situation there. At the same time, really since I recorded, something different has happened. The story has evolved in a way I wasn't expecting, and it really stems from basically a Nick Saban interview that he did, I guess it was Thursday afternoon, sort of as I was recording, and when I was recording on Thursday, it was really about the Nick Saban comment, Jimbo Fisher's follow-up, but what has since become the story, I believe, is the Nick Saban interview that came after that. And what I found interesting was, for people who do not know, Nick Saban, after the Jimbo Fisher response, Nick Saban essentially did a half-hearted apology tour. He goes on SiriusXM with a buddy of mine, Jacob Hester, Bobby Carpenter were the two guys, former players. Jacob Hester was actually recruited and played for Nick Saban. And he does, in my opinion, a half-hearted interview with a half-hearted apology where he basically says three things of note. One, I apologize to Jimbo Fisher. Didn't mean to call out anybody. Two, I also never accused Texas A&M of cheating. And three, he said, other than naming schools individually, well, I don't really take back anything I said. And what was interesting to me was the response that interview from Nick Saban got. Because to me, when I look at this story, it is basically, if you want to call it a play in three parts, that's kind of what it has been. Part one was the sticker shock of Nick Saban saying what he did on Wednesday night. Two was the Jimbo Fisher response. And then three was the response to Nick Saban, which I found kind of jarring. I found it kind of jarring because when I saw the Nick Saban apology, it didn't really move the needle for me. But it seemed as though the response by most people, whether it's fans of other schools that either aren't A&M or aren't Alabama, media, and other people that have followed this story is, well, now I'm back on Nick Saban's side. And what Nick Saban said made sense. And Nick Saban was talking to his boosters, and Nick Saban was talking about the future college football. And I'll even take it a step further. I saw some people then retroactively going back and saying that Jimbo Fisher was out of line for some of the things that he said on Thursday morning. People in the media, people that cover college football, people that I respect, people that I've been reading for years. And I bring this all up because to me, and this is the topic of the day, and this is what I want to get into, I am stunned at the reaction to Nick Saban's half-hearted apology, and it made me think of one thing. I obviously do a lot of college basketball on this show, and for years, you guys and girls have told me that Coach K is covered in a different way than everybody else in college basketball. That he gets away with stuff and he doesn't get called out for stuff that everybody else would. John Calipari would. Jim Boeheim would. Dan Hurley would. Mick Cronin would. But that Coach K gets away with this stuff. And I had the exact same thought about Nick Saban. I had the exact same thought about Nick Saban where it almost feels like we work in and live in a media climate, and I am not one, and I think that's why we have success on this show, where you're not allowed to criticize certain figures, and certain figures can never be criticized, can never be touched, can never be whatever. And so my biggest takeaway is, why can't two things about Nick Saban be true? Why can't we acknowledge that he was talking to boosters, that he wants what's best for the future of college football, and that he was also a big jerk that should not have said what he said about Texas A&M and to a smaller degree, Jackson State as well. And so let's dive into it. Let's get into it because, again, the reaction to this is fascinating, and it's not very often in my career that a reaction to a story this big surprises me, but this one genuinely does. And let me start with defending Nick Saban to a degree here. As I just said a minute ago, I do understand the context of what was going on. I do understand that, first of all, he was speaking to a group of his boosters, okay? This video was never supposed to get out. It was never supposed to get viral, and it was never supposed to go to Jackson State, to Texas A&M, to Jimbo Fisher, to Deion Sanders, to whoever. I understand also that Nick Saban was basically kind of unofficially delivering a message to his boosters as well. Listen, this is where I believe college football is, but this is where I believe NIL is going. We may get to a time. We just had the number 2 recruiting class, and we didn't pay for anybody. Now, whether you believe that or not, that's another conversation for another day. But what he was essentially saying was, we don't pay for anybody, and we had the number 2 class in the country, but I don't know if we can possibly continue to have the success that we have had recruiting, which of course leads to success on the field, if we don't play this game. And so I do understand that Nick Saban was essentially trying to rally the troops. He was trying to say, look, I'm not saying we need a $30 million collective, but we may need one pretty soon. If you want to keep winning at the highest level, we may need this collective. So I understand that. And I also understand that at the end of the day, Nick Saban has what's in the best interest of college football in his heart and at his core, okay? I do get that, and I do understand that everything that Nick Saban has said, whenever he says, do you really want college football to be this? He struggles with it, he gets frustrated by it, and then he adapts and dominates anyway. It happened with the spread offense. He talked about it a year and a half ago with the transfer portal, saying, you sure you want to let all these guys come and go? Because we're going to keep all our best players, then we're going to go get 3, 4, 5 difference makers out of the portal, and we're going to be even better than you thought we could be. And I think he's there with NIL as well. So I understand all of that from Nick Saban's perspective. What I don't understand, though, is everybody else in the media totally giving him a pass for everything else that happened on Thursday, on Wednesday night into Thursday, and then the apology on Friday, Thursday night. First of all, can you spare me the apology? We all know Nick Saban, like the idea that people in the media are like, well, he apologized. What else do you want from him? Like, yeah, I guess he apologized because he got caught, because he had to. I mean, think about it just from the most basic level. Think about how bad Nick Saban has to screw up for Greg Sankey to come down on him. I love Greg Sankey. I think he should be the next commissioner of the NCAA. I don't think he'd ever take the job, president of the NCAA, whatever. But Greg Sankey, Nick Saban's his golden goose. It's his cash cow. The SEC offices are based in Birmingham. You know how much you have to screw up as the Alabama coach to get a public reprimand from the SEC commissioner? So spare me with the apology. And then finally, by the way, spare me with the I never accused them of cheating. Yeah, you did. Because NCAA rules say that right now, NIL cannot be a recruiting enticement and it cannot be a pay-for-play scenario. Well, if they bought recruits, that means that you did, in fact, accuse them of cheating. And if you want to say you didn't accuse them of cheating because the NCAA rules are vague, whatever, well, the Texas state laws are not vague at all. And Jimbo Fisher talked about this in his press conference on Thursday morning. He goes, for us to be paying recruits, it means that we broke state law. And players and their families broke state law to take that money. So Jimbo Fisher was not even people want to crush Jimbo Fisher. He was mad, and he was mad at Nick Saban, no doubt, but he's also fighting for his recruits and fighting for his family, saying, if you're accusing this of happening, then you're accusing my players, my student athletes, and their parents of breaking Texas state law. So spare me I didn't really accuse them of cheating. Yeah, I guess by technicality you didn't because the NCAA rules are vague. But if Jimbo Fisher got that mad and you had to apologize, you clearly said something wrong. It reminds me of the tweet that I sent out on Thursday. Nick Saban saying in this case that he did not accuse Texas A&M of cheating. That's like somebody being on a diet eating a big piece of apple pie for dessert, half of the pie, and then saying, yeah, but I put Diet Cool Whip on it, so that's not really cheating on my diet. Yeah, by technicality, it's not cheating, but we all know you're full of crap, and we all know that Nick Saban is full of crap. But to me, what this really comes down to is the coverage of Nick Saban. I just do not understand how anyone in the media, how anyone other than an Alabama fan, and we have Alabama fans listen to this. By the way, Alabama fans, fight for your coach, fight for your program, fight for the future of college football. But I don't understand how anybody else who is not an Alabama fan can possibly defend Nick Saban on this one. The bottom line is, at the end of the day, what he did is exactly what I told you last week. He took unsubstantiated reports, turned them into facts, and accused a lot of people of a lot of things that we have absolutely no proof on. I've told you a million times. I'm not going to get into it again. Do I believe that at the end of the day, NIL in some form or fashion was involved in the Texas A&M recruiting pitch? I absolutely do, because it's involved in every single recruiting pitch for every single high-level player at the Power 5 level, in football, Power 6 level, in basketball, whatever. But do I believe that was the only factor in Texas A&M's top class? I do not. And to take it a step further, what Nick Saban accused Texas A&M of doing, we have zero proof of. This is the part that frustrates me from the Nick Saban comments and from the people that are still trying to defend Nick Saban. He just took a made-up internet report that has no factual basis to it and tried to put it out as accurate, as factual, as what Texas A&M definitively did. Remember, this report, as I said on last show, it did not come from The Athletic. It did not come from ESPN. It did not come from Pete Thamel. It did not come from Bruce Feldman. It did not come from ABC News or the New York Times or even TMZ. It came from an Oklahoma message board that was then aggregated into a website called Bro Bible, that there is a $30 million fund for all of Texas A&M's recruits. That is the only place that it ever was reported, if you even want to call it reported. That's where this whole story started from. So for Nick Saban to try to turn this into a story, for Nick Saban to outright use the term Texas A&M bought players based off that story is absolutely ridiculous. And so to me, that is what is especially frustrating about this story. It's the two things that drive me the craziest about the current media landscape. And listen, I'm not saying that I'm perfect. I get a lot of stuff wrong, right? Where Aaron was right, where Aaron was wrong. We do it on this show every week because I like to own when I miss on stuff, and it's not to say that I am not going to eventually be proven wrong on this story. It's not to say that in a week or a month or a day that something about NIL with Texas A&M might come out that might make me change the story. But as I always tell you, I always say, I have to react to what I have in real time, the data and information and facts that I have in real time. And I think that is why most of you guys and girls listen, and I think most of you guys and girls, to some degree, respect me, what I do, and what I'm about. I might not always be right, but I don't make up my own facts. I look at the information that we have available, then make my opinions based on the information that we have available, and then I adjust accordingly. I did it, by the way, 2 years ago with Sean Miller. Every single person in the media was trying to bash Sean Miller and crush Sean Miller and say he should never coach again. I said, look, I don't know all the details, but based on the factual information we have, this guy should be allowed to coach Arizona, or at the very least allowed to coach somewhere else. Well, what happened? He got hired this offseason by Xavier after it became clear that what he was accused of is not factually correct. And so to bring it back to Nick Saban, this is the part that frustrates me the most about this whole situation. Is one, this is the new media landscape that we live in, where everybody, all the way up to Nick freaking Saban, can make up his own facts or cite unfactual reports. But then two, people are trying to defend him. Again, why can't we just say, Nick Saban's the greatest coach in college football. He's talking to his boosters. He's trying to raise money. He is worried about the future of college football with unregulated NIL. By the way, you know who else is worried about it? Jimbo Fisher. He talked about it in his press conference. Why can't we say that that is the truth about Nick Saban, but also that he had no right to call out schools individually? And I just don't understand why people in the media are afraid to attack Nick Saban or at least criticize him. This is the thing that drives me crazy about the current media landscape, besides the fact that people make up facts. It's the idea that there are certain people that are deemed untouchable, right? We see this in the NBA all the time. People say that, LeBron, you can't ask a tough question about LeBron or you're going to lose access to him. Who cares if you lose access to him? Our jobs in the media are not to defend or soften or make life easy for the people that we cover. Our job is to ask tough questions, to use the facts, to use the information that we have, right? It's the same with I just talked about with college basketball. Why can't we ask Coach K a tough question? Why can't we criticize him when he's trying to, get the 2020 season canceled in the middle of COVID, or when he defends Grayson Allen when Grayson Allen doesn't deserve defending? Like, why can't we be critical of him? And it's the same to me with Nick Saban. I'll give you another example. It popped into my head as I'm talking here. Remember over the last year, the coverage of Ben Simmons, and I know this is very abstract, and I know I'm going in a lot of different directions, but just stay with me here. The coverage of Ben Simmons was absolutely incredible, right? So this guy quits on his team, then refuses to talk to his team, then refuses to show up to camp, then shows up at camp, tanks a practice, then says his back hurts, and only after he says his back hurts and he's cleared by the doctors does he say, I've also been dealing with mental health problems. And I bring it up because the second that Ben Simmons said, I'm dealing with mental health issues, it became, you can't criticize Ben Simmons. He's dealing with mental health. And to be clear, I always say it, I take mental health very seriously. My wife works in the mental health field. My sister works in the mental health field. My sister-in-law works in the mental health field. I deal with people every day that work in the mental health field. But just because Ben Simmons says, we still have to be able to use all of the facts that we have to say, wait a second now, is mental health the only issue here with Ben Simmons, or is there something else going on that maybe we should at least question? And it's the same with Nick Saban. We could sit here and say that he cares about the future of college football. We could sit here and say that he cares about, raising money with his boosters, but also say that he was dead wrong on this. It's okay. It's not a big deal. The world will continue to revolve around its axis. Nick Saban is still the greatest coach that's ever lived in the history of college football. Alabama's still the preseason favorite going into next year. And as long as Nick Saban's the head coach, Alabama is still going to be the preeminent program in college football. So I don't understand. I haven't understood all weekend long why people felt the need to defend Nick Saban. But the one thing that I will say, it did strike me. It does feel like the coverage has been slanted towards Nick Saban. It does feel like there was a quick blowback and a quick appreciation of everything that Jimbo Fisher said, and then it immediately defaulted to, Nick Saban, he did apologize. How critical can we be? I don't really get it. I'm a little bit frustrated by it. I think part of it is there's a lot of people, whether it's in the media or in fans that follow college football, that truly believe or want to believe what Nick Saban said, that there's no way that Texas A&M could do this legitimately. But then, two, I also just think Nick Saban is covered different, and this is the promise that I'm going to make to you guys and girls. As long as I do this show, as long as I have a YouTube channel, which make sure you're subscribed, we just hit 11,000 subscribers. As long as I have a platform, as long as I'm doing radio, as long as I have a social media feed, as long as I'm talking about sports, I will always use the facts available to me to make judgments on whatever the story is. And as the facts change, I will adjust my opinion, and I'm just going to say it. I feel like I'm the only one in the media doing it, but I think Nick Saban was dead wrong in how he handled this situation over the last couple days.